There is this sort of open war on Black progress, Black history. Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard University, at least up until she resigned, is now the latest casualty of that.
Yes. You know, that Harvard board is filled with racists. And this is just the latest example of first the anti-Semitism, now the anti-Black racism at Harvard University. They should stop getting tax dollars, don't you think? I think so. Well, happy Wednesday to you, and welcome to our humble radio broadcast. It's a world gone mad, and we're paying attention. Sharing some of the madness. I only have 3 hours a day. And between the Democrats, the jihadis, the Russians, the communists, Chinese, the 3 hours is simply not enough. And then we get into this Harvard University and the end of the gay era at Harvard. The gay era comes to a screeching halt. It's very sad. Harvard president's resignation fuels accusations of racism from Black leaders. You know who they call Black leaders? The Reverend Al Sharpton. You know, these are the people that demonize Dr. Ben Carson, a globally renowned pediatric neurosurgeon, and he's kicked to the curb by the mainstream liberal left, the media allies, but never mind that. But the Reverend Al Sharpton of Tawana Brawley fame. Where's Tawana Brawley? Shouldn't she have her own show on MSNBC by now? I think she should. But we've got that going. Now, before I jump into that, I want to, because I just mentioned the jihad, and the Democrat Party is now on the side of the jihad. The students at Harvard are on the side of the jihad. Harvard president, now outgoing Harvard president, who will stay, you'll be happy to learn, at Harvard University as a professor where she will teach racism and anti-Semitism. You know that you can major in anti-Semitism at Harvard? Isn't that interesting? Hey, you went to Harvard? Yes, I did. What is your degree? Oh, by the way, that was Joy Reid we played at the beginning there. She went to Harvard because it's such a terrible racist country and everything is awful for everybody. It's amazing. But just amazing stuff. And the Harvard people, you can get your degree in anti-Semitism. That's not, and it's not that you're taught to not be an anti-Semite. You're taught to be an anti-Semite. You can get a post-grad degree, I think, in that too. And speaking of the mayhem in the Middle East because of Hamas, which is backed by Iran, with money provided to Iran by Obama and Biden, the number one and number two funders of the Islamic Revolution in Iran. And you may remember that there was a chief terror kingpin named Qasem Soleimani. Qasem Soleimani was killed in a strike ordered by then-President Donald Trump. It was a good decision to kill this butcher, and still he's a hero to some in Iran and not to others, because we just learned minutes ago, the Reuters news agency, more than 100 killed in terrorist attacks. There are terrorist attacks in Iran near the tomb of Iranian Guards Soleimani. That's the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. And Soleimani was the head of and he was responsible for targeting and killing Americans in Iraq. They weren't at war in Iraq, but they're at war against civilization. Qasem Soleimani targeted and was, as the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps chief, he was in charge of targeting and killing Americans in Iraq. A bad guy. Barack Obama sent tens and tens of billions of dollars to Iran so they could get to work, enriching uranium and killing Jews. Did you see the Iranians there under this? JCPOA, the stupidest name for an agreement in the history of stupid agreements. They've enriched uranium up to about 60% purity now, which they're prohibited from doing under this idiotic joint comprehensive plan of action that the idiot Democrats came up with, Boltneck, John Kerry, and Barack Hussein Obama. That's right, I said Hussein. And they didn't kill Qasem Soleimani, but President Trump did. Now we see more than 100 killed in terrorist attacks near tomb of Iranian guards Soleimani. And the dateline is Dubai, because you don't really get in there to report very often into Iran, because it's a terrorist state funded by Democrats in the United States. 2 explosions caused by a terrorist attack killed more than 100 people and wounded scores at a ceremony in Iran to commemorate top General Qasem Soleimani, who was killed by a U.S. drone in 2020, Iranian officials said on Wednesday. Iranian state television reported a first and then a second blast during an anniversary event at the cemetery where Qasem Soleimani is buried in the southeastern city of Kerman. All right, so that's happening in Iran. And it's kind of an interesting thing, because who would do that? Who might be behind such an attack? This is not a drone strike. It's not an air strike. It's not a missile. It appears to be 2 devices detonated at the ceremony honoring Qasem Soleimani. You might conclude that it is perhaps a group or individuals inside of Iran that are opposed to the regime, the Ayatollah's regime, and not a fan of Qasem Soleimani. Now, of course, the regime, they're big fans of Qasem Soleimani. The radical Islamists, big fans of Qasem Soleimani. So who would blow up an event honoring Qasem Soleimani? Interesting question. An unnamed official told the state news agency IRNA that 2 explosive devices planted along the road leading to Kerman's Martyrs Cemetery were detonated remotely by terrorists, usually cell phone detonators. That's the easy way. Spokesperson for Iran's emergency services was saying 73 people had been killed, 170 injured. State television later said at least 100 people had been killed. No group had yet claimed responsibility for the attacks. So that is interesting and something to keep an eye on. You may remember during the Obama administration, there was an uprising inside of Iran, and the Democrats didn't support the people rising up against the Islamic revolution inside of Iran. I tell my best girl and I were out to dinner the other night, and we sat as a sushi place, and we sat at the bar at the place, and our wait person, Iranian from Iran, and a very good guy, had a riot and lived in Europe for a bunch of years, came to the United States. He's not pro-regime, and we had a great conversation about how screwy things are there, and how he hopes that in his lifetime, at least, that Iran becomes a civilized country, not ruled by radical Islamists. That would be great for all of humankind, as a matter of fact. Now, let's get back to, I'll keep my ear to the ground on that to see if anything develops. But that's what we got out of Iran so far. Now they're saying 103 killed, 103. Sounds like they're getting more precise. Honoring Qasem Soleimani. Hey, there's that great Qasem Soleimani celebration today at the Martyrs Cemetery. They blow up so soon, don't they? So, crazy world out there. The United States used to be a life raft for the world from all of that. The Democrats are trying to dismantle our life raft, the world's life raft. But let's get back to the dim-witted Democrats at Harvard University. Now, the front page of the Washington Post, nothing about the 18-year-old girl who was the president of her high school class, who was attending Louisiana State University, a great young woman whose grandfather, the Reverend, was very disappointed by her being shot to death on New Year's Eve, less than 2 hours. The first homicide of 2024 inside of Washington, D.C., 18-year-old girl. Beautiful, wonderful. The pictures of her smiling and looks like a lovely person. That's not on the front page of the Washington Post, because when they tell you Black Lives Matter, to them, that's just another lie. Then they send a check to Planned Parenthood. But never mind that. What they do have on the front page of the Washington Post today. Gay resigns in face of growing criticism. How dare you be critical of her? Don't you know she's a woman of color? After testimony backlash, Harvard's president was accused of plagiarism. Only in 50 instances. I think more than 50 instances. Now, Harvard president Claudine Gay resigned Thursday after weeks of criticism of her scholarship and leadership on the campus, saying it would help the university move forward with a focus on the institution rather than any individual. And that's where Joy Reid, who went to Harvard, said, racism, because everybody's a racist, you know, except Joy Reid, right, who's the biggest racist in the conversation. But she was the second Ivy League president to resign in the wake of a congressional hearing last month on campus anti-Semitism, a sign to some of the power that politicians and donors can wield. You mean Congress, and it's true, donors started saying, well, I'm not giving money to Harvard anymore. And they're like, well, then we're going to have to fire her, because really all we are is a fundraising organization, Harvard University, an investment firm, a real estate firm. What do they have? $50 billion in endowments. It may be more than that by now. Sign of the power that politicians and donors can. You notice they hadn't mentioned the donors until there. Gay was also confronted with dozens of allegations of plagiarism, like Joe Biden, from her academic work. University leaders said last month that she did not engage in the research misconduct and the plagiarism. They started using all kinds of euphemisms to describe plagiarism. In fact, there's a really funny one from CNN that I'm going to share with you, because it's like, it's the old, they use the words, but they don't know what they mean. That was a great one. So she didn't conduct the research that she claimed to have conducted, and some scholars were skeptical of the claims. Now, some questioned whether Gay, there's a lot of some in here. The word some appears a lot, that, random anonymous people on the internet or something. Good enough for the Washington Post as sources. Some questioned whether Gay, who in July became Harvard's first black president, was being held to a different standard. She was being held to a lower standard, and then she was made the president of Harvard because of her race. This is the Washington Post. But critics, and even some who have long supported Gay, said the mounting questions made her position increasingly untenable. Now, this is classic left-wing spin, the usual stuff. In fact, they're so pathetic. My best girl pointed out this morning in the Washington Post, the Harvard Corporation, they call it the Harvard Corporation because it is a big corporation, which is one of the university's governing boards, expressed its unanimous support for Gay on December 12th. They said, our extensive deliberations affirm our confidence that President Gay is the right leader to help our community. They always use that word community, don't they? Heal. They love the word heal too. And to address the very serious societal issues we're facing. You mean the rampant pro-jihad anti-Semitism on your campus? More than 700 faculty members. How many faculty members do you think they have at Harvard? Well, they have like one faculty member per student. What's going on with that? More than 700 faculty members had called on the corporation not to give in to external pressure. Gay has deep knowledge of the school after getting her doctorate there and leading the school's Faculty of Arts and Sciences. Now, that's wonderful. But 700 of the faculty members there said that they signed onto a thing. So, oh, you've got to keep her. She's, never mind 50 credible accusations of plagiarism, and she only has 11 papers. She's never written a book, and she is the president of Harvard. And but fear not, I'll explain why you shouldn't be concerned for her coming up, because really, her being fired from this job might be the best thing that ever happened to her. How much money will she be making? She's staying at the university to teach. You know what the anti-Semitic plagiarist teaches? I'll explain what the anti-Semitic plagiarist teaches at Harvard and how much she will continue to make after being fired as president of Harvard. It's an appallingly corrupt institution, and we're just scratching the surface as a culture. We need to take on this culture of corruption that the left has instituted, not just in academia, but across our civilization. I've got a few details on that coming up. Hey, it's Chris Plant, excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Visit chrisplantcruise.com. We looked it up. We got 700 members of the Harvard faculty signed on to a letter saying that they should keep the anti-Semite plagiarist as president of Harvard because it's good for your reputation. We looked it up. There are 2,400 members of the faculty at Harvard, 2,400. 700 of them signed on to the letter to keep the anti-Semitic, racist, plagiarist. So that means the rest of them, 1,700 of them, are racists by the Joy Reid standard, and Joy Reid went to Harvard. See? Sounds like Harvard is really a problem spot for our culture and our country. Should probably be closed permanently. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Lois, calling from Purcellville, Virginia. Lois, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hi, Chris. I do so enjoy your show, but today I wanted to talk about the president and Harvard. It is impossible for her to have gotten her dissertation done without somebody on her committee saying, "Hey, you forgot to cite this very important work." When you have your dissertation, you have people who are on your committee who are experts in the field. So they have to have seen the anomalies in her dissertation. And the same thing goes for all her published work, because it goes through a committee of review. Those people on the committee are, generally speaking, people who are experts in the field, and they would know when citations were missing. So, I would bet of those 700 people who signed that, alleged faculty members who signed that letter, at least some of them were on her dissertation committee.
You sound like someone with a background in academia.
Yes, I am. I'm a retired professor, and I've actually got published articles with all my citations being current.
And
it's just I'm amazed that she got to be president with 11 articles, whether they're plagiarized or not.
Right.
11 articles is something you do as an assistant professor.
And in 1 year. Yeah, and in a single year, 11 articles, no books, 11 articles, 50 allegations at least of plagiarism. And you're right, of course they're all reviewed. Harvard, let's face it, Harvard is a joke. I've been making fun of Harvard for years. I've worked with a lot of Harvard people. I'm not impressed. Now, Claudine Gay. Is that her porn name, Michael? I'm just a little confused by that. The end of the gay era. Oh, I should mention, because it's a big deal, just by the way, that we learned just, when did we learn? An hour ago or so. The U.S. national debt has surpassed $34 trillion. $34 trillion. Joe Biden has added more than $6 trillion to our national debt in under 3 years. And he goes around smirking with his fake teeth and his plastic surgery and his plugs and telling us everything's great and the economy's wonderful. And, we fixed the roads. And the federal government doesn't fix the roads, but that's okay. U.S. national debt hits record $34 trillion. $34 trillion. U.S. government debt topped $34 trillion for the first time, just weeks ahead of deadlines for Congress to agree to new federal funding plans. Somebody should go to jail. This is the most reckless and irresponsible fiscal mismanagement that any government has ever seen in the history of the world. and that is actually understatement. Data published by the Treasury Department showed that total public debt outstanding rose to $34.001 trillion on December 29th. Hey, Happy New Year, America. That figure, also known as the national debt, is the total amount of outstanding borrowing by the U.S. federal government accumulated over the nation's history. I think during Reagan it was like $2 trillion, and we were in a panic over the national debt at the time. And now our reckless, criminal, political leaders say, it's just debt. Don't worry about it. We'll pretend that it's not real. And one day it will become real. And our chickens will come home to roost, as Barack Obama's spiritual guidepost, the Reverend Jeremiah Wright, said immediately after the September 11th, 2001 terror attacks, but never mind that. The milestone comes just 3 months after the U.S. national debt surpassed $33 trillion. Isn't that amazing? So just 3 months, added another one from 33 trillion to 34 trillion. Our news media will ignore it because our news media is ignorant and corrupt. Let me correct that. They're corrupt first, and they're ignorant second. Some of them are not as ignorant as others, but this should be grounds for, for legal charges to be filed. And Republicans ought to be, pounding a machete on the podium up on Capitol Hill and demanding that we get our spending under control and get our fiscal house in order, which is why we elect Republicans and not leftists who are here to destroy capitalism. They're using the Cloward and Piven strategy, radical left-wing extremist college professors who decades ago put together a plan to bankrupt capitalism worldwide by bankrupting the United States of America, the world's bank. We're the bank of dad. Now let's get back to the corrupt people at Harvard who are also leftists. Harvard's Claudine Gay set to keep her nearly $900,000 annual salary despite resigning as university president. She won't be leading the Crimson, but green shouldn't be a problem. Outgoing Harvard president Claudine Gay will still likely earn nearly $900,000 a year, despite being forced to resign her position as the school's top administrator. Political science professor Gay, who stepped down amid a tempest of allegations that she did not do enough to combat anti-Semitism and academic plagiarism, will return to a position on the Cambridge Mass School's faculty. Prior to being named president just 6 months ago, the shortest tenure of any Harvard president in the history of the university. And by the way, when they chose her to be president of the university, it was the shortest search for a new president in the modern era. Now, prior to being named president just 6 months ago, Gay earned $879,079 as a Faculty of Arts and Sciences dean in 2021 and $824,068 in 2020, according to records published by the university. Her new position was not specified on Tuesday, but she is expected to receive a salary comparable to what she received previously, if not higher. I have seen other reports saying that her salary would be over $900,000. It was also unclear how much of her presidential salary, of roughly $1 million, Gay would be entitled to after serving in the post only 6 months. Pretty amazing stuff. Her predecessor, Lawrence Bacow, pulled in $1.3 million annually before his departure, according to the Harvard Crimson. Alan M. Garber, who currently serves as provost at Harvard and chief academic officer, will serve as interim president until the school selects a new chief, officials said on Tuesday. Chief? The place is a catastrophe. And honestly, I've worked in Washington for a long time, and from the day that I came to Washington more than 30 years ago now, I've been working in the news media and other media with lots and lots of Harvard people everywhere. And, as a city college guy, I always thought it was kind of fun outwitting them and outsmarting them. And some of them are perfectly intelligent people who actually got an education while they were there, some of them. But for the most part, that's really not the case. The Washington Examiner has the story today. Elise Stefanik praises Harvard President Claudine Gay's resignation. Quote, "Two down," end quote. The president of the University of Pennsylvania also resigned after their disgraceful appearance on Capitol Hill. And, what are they doing? The news media is, and you got one to go still at MIT with the anti-Semitism thing, but the Democrats they love the word embraced. They've embraced anti-Semitism. It's a way of life for them. Now, I went to the Harvard University website this morning, and the website still shows Claudine Gay as the president of Harvard University, but it also shows Claudine Gay, president of Harvard University, and the Wilbert A. Cowett Professor of Government and African American Studies. That's what they're and anti-Semitism. They like to teach that too. The Department of African and African American Studies. They've lumped them together, which is racist, obviously. And in her nearly hilarious, now I was reading her thing, and I am currently serving as president of Harvard University. I'm also a professor of government and of African American Studies. Previously, I served as the Dean of Social Science for the Faculty of Arts and Sciences. But it's all about black and white and race. And in fact, she goes on about the relationship between black Americans and Hispanic Americans, because this is what's really important, right? Focus on relations between black Americans and Latinos. This is what Harvard is doing. Harvard is an embarrassment. It really is. It's just awful. And the people in the New York Times are very upset too. Claudine Gay is the headline. And the limits of social engineering at Harvard, which the New York Times supports social engineering, racial engineering at Harvard, because Democrats, the party of the Confederate States of America. That's who they are. Just amazing. Now let me go to some audio here. Let's go to why don't we start soundbite number one? Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, and she's been great. Now, while Claudine Gay is claiming that it was racists that took her down, and CNN and MSNBC, racists took her down, not plagiarism and the sneering and smirking smugly when being asked about the genocide of the Jewish people and Jewish students being unsafe on campus. Never mind any of that. This was a key moment on the December 5th congressional hearing where Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik from New York put it to Claudine Gay, while Claudine Gay cocked her head sideways and smirked with a curled lip, and it was like the definition of smug.
So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
It depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign.
And then, December 5th, and this is why you should resign. Well, she didn't resign, and Harvard stood by her until it started to look like a financial problem for them, because big-time donors that give millions and millions of dollars to Harvard and pay to have their names put on buildings that they have constructed started saying, I don't think I'm going to give you any more money. I'm like, what? Money? And there's another problem they have. There are students, Harvard students, and faculty that have found themselves in hot water in the past several decades for charges of plagiarism. And they were punished, some expelled, some fired for plagiarism. And now, if they keep the Harvard president a known plagiarist and anti-Semite, but they're fine with that, then they could face legal jeopardy, because lots of people might sue them for having a double standard when it comes to Claudine Gay versus everyone else who was actually punished for being found to plagiarize papers, documents, books, and so on. And that could cost them more money. And that's problematic because really it's all about the money. That's the whole point. Money. See? Now, let me go to soundbite number 2, which is Elise Stefanik, Congressman Elise Stefanik on the Sean Hannity program on the Fox News Channel last night talking about, well, and honestly, it is a victory for her and for truth, justice, and the American way, which the left opposes on every level.
There is a reason that the testimony of the presidents of Harvard, Penn, and MIT made history as the most viewed testimony ever, with over 1 billion views, and that's because their testimony was morally bankrupt and pathetic. My question was very simple. It was a moral question. Does calling for the genocide of Jews ruin your school's code of conduct? Does go against your school's code of conduct? And every single one said it depended upon the context. We know it does not depend on the context. It should be condemned. It is not that difficult to say that, yet all 3 failed abysmally, and the world saw it.
And the world saw it. And but they were still fine with it. The lefties at Harvard were still fine with it. Now, Claudine Gay wrote an all too long letter about herself and how wonderful she is and what a victim she is. And she said, amidst all of this, it has been distressing, she said, to have doubt cast on my commitments to confronting hate. Well, you had an opportunity on Capitol Hill and after you left Capitol Hill, but you never did. As long as it's Jew hate, you seem to be fine with that. And to upholding scholarly rigor. She had scholarly rigor with her more than 50 counts of plagiarism. 2 bedrock values that are fundamental to who I am. And frightening to be subjected to personal attacks and threats fueled by racist animus. Well, racial animus. And really it's fueled by racial animus, not academic purity, or maybe they're not anti-Semites. Maybe the people that have been critical are not anti-Semites. But her letter about herself that goes on and on and on, that's okay. You're still going to make $900,000 a year for teaching people to be more racist at Harvard. Just amazing stuff. The New York Times, very upset. New campus politics, resignation of Harvard president shows, and that this is hilarious. They say that this is about Hamas. It shows how the Hamas crisis has affected campus politics. It's just amazing. These people, and they're going out of their way to be pro-Hamas, which is a genocidal, racist, anti-Semitic terrorist army hell-bent on the total destruction of a nation of people. And at Harvard, they're like, well, Hamas, they got a point. They lost a condo. And it scrambled campus politics, the New York Times says. Amazing stuff. Elise Stefanik last night on the Sean Hannity program.
It is unacceptable that it took Harvard a month to demand the resignation of Claudine Gay. Penn made the right decision immediately, but this is after it was forced in front of the world to see. And I believe these university presidents sit atop these institutions that have rotted out and have institutionalized anti-Semitism, particularly after Hamas's terrorist attack against Israel in early October. We've seen Jewish students assaulted, physically harassed, and facing just vile attacks every single day.
Yeah, well, some people tell the truth. And as we know, in Washington in particular, and in the United States of America, nothing gets you in trouble like the truth. MSDNC doesn't have that problem. And CNN certainly doesn't have that problem. We've got some of our corrupt media coming up with their dishonest take on what's happening in the United States of America. Let me go to some media audio here. MSDNC. Let's play number 5 again. It's only 14 seconds. Joyless Reed, who naturally went to Harvard, and is paid by MSDNC millions of dollars, is an extremist and a radical and a racist, well established. She was on DNC last night.
There is this sort of open war on Black progress, Black history.
Right.
Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard University, at least up until she resigned, is now the latest casualty of that.
Yeah, it's open war. The racist Harvard board. How about the anti-Semitism? And they all hate the Jews. The left, they've jumped in with Hamas and Hezbollah. Interesting goings on in Lebanon yesterday, as a matter of fact. And she continued.
Why are these elite colleges capitulating to it and essentially making it so uncomfortable for these women leaders that they have to step down to be replaced by white men?
We don't know who. Well, there's an interim replacement white man. I think we're probably going to have a one-legged Tasmanian lesbian take over Harvard before we're done. Joyless read.
And there's no intellectual inquiry about it. They're just trying to take out any woman or person of color who leads elite universities so they can give them to the people they prefer, which is the guys used to have in the 50s.
Yeah, they are. That's when the Democrats were in charge of everything. On CNN, an embarrassment to journalism as well. They have a fake reporter named Matt Egan, and this is almost too funny. They use the words, but they don't know what they mean.
These plagiarism allegations, where Claudine Gay has had to issue corrections, multiple corrections. Now, we should note that Claudine Gay has not been accused of stealing anyone's ideas in any of her writings. She's been accused of sort of more like copying other people's writings without attribution. So it's been more sloppy attribution than stealing anyone's ideas.
Copying other people's writings without attribution. That is the dictionary definition of plagiarism. They use the words, but they don't know what they mean. Matt Egan's mother should call him and explain to him what words mean. They should send him a dictionary. This is our media.